Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are back from our week off. We got a ton of games here. We have split it into two shows here because it is our annual bowl series. We have a ton of bowl games, 44, I believe. We'll be covering 18 of them here for you in our bowl season part one. Obviously, you'll be watching this as these games are running. They go from the 16th through the 23rd for this particular show. So down in the description, or on the timeline, I guess, as you're scrolling through, I will timestamp if the games have already gone by and you don't want to hear about those games that have already been played. Real quickly, because we did have a week off, I will introduce my co-host here, and we'll talk very quickly about the playoff selection. From what I hear, guys, there's been a little bit of talk of the town in regards to the teams here. But now, Andy, Tom, welcome. Of course, Andy, I'll start with you. Real quickly, what are your comments here on the potential snubbing of FSU?
I mean, I think it's pretty ridiculous. I think they have every right to be upset. They met every absolute possible requirement that that they were perceived or thought they would need to. All those requirements had led every other team ever that had done that to get into the college football playoff. 13-0, Power 5 conference champion. Apparently, the committee just proved that the games mean absolutely nothing, folks. I understand they're on their third string quarterback. I understand they probably would have gone in and gotten trounced by Michigan. But, man, it feels like they left a very deserving team out. But my last thing I'll say on this, if it wasn't for that Big 10, Big 12, ACC alliance or whatever or Pac-12, Big 10, Pac-12, ACC alliance that they formed a few years ago, there could have been a 12-team playoff this year, and Florida State would not have had to worry about that. Also, the interesting story, the state of Florida is suing the college football playoff committee, and Florida State alleging some collusion potentially in the committee because some ACC commissioners from different schools are on that committee, so they are not happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people down here in northern Florida not happy about the decision. I'm sure towards the east, when you get towards Gainesville, they find it a little bit funnier. But yeah, Tom, what are your comments here? I know you wanted to talk about this one because it is really interesting. Like Andy said, never happened before with the way that they've laid out, presented to the teams what they need to do. Everyone thinks FSU did it, but apparently not. So what are your thoughts here?
Money talks, and you need Bama and Texas in there for the money purposes. Andy, just want to acknowledge you were right. I was wrong about the Texas-Georgia thing. However, I still think Georgia's one of the four best teams in the nation. It's just unfortunate that they were left out. I think any other year they get in. I think a 3-point loss to Bama in the SEC championship game, it really sucks, but you got to win, right? Sometimes you just have to win out, and this was a year that they had to win out to get in. I think from now on, we have to automatically put the SEC championship winner in the college football playoff. Again, we won't have to worry about it in the future with 12 teams, but let's say like an 8-4 LSU trolls in there. Not that that'll ever happen, but just automatically put them in. Sucks for FSU as well. Everything that Andy said is very valid. Just wanted to say sucks for Georgia too. I mean, all 6 of those teams deserved a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it really would have been. I know we've been fighting on this show for more teams in the playoff in these previous years, and we did get it. But man, it would have been a hell of a playoff had we had the 12 this year. So shout out to the Alliance for ruining that for everyone. You kind of bit your own ass here on this one. But what I will say is, yeah, it was just so difficult to pick these teams. I do think, I mean, Kirk Herbstreit took to Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, he's got Twitter fingers, folks.
Yeah, he just blew up on some FSU fans. But yeah, basically the whole argument, obviously, deserving versus, best.
Team.
So, yeah, say what you want here. There are 6 teams that you could put any of the 6 in my opinion. But, you play the games for a reason. I think FSU should have been in. They ticked all the boxes. But that is not the case. That'll wrap up our very quick recap of the last week and get back into the action here. 18 games on the slate here. It is bowl week. Bowl month, I guess, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll start off with the first one here. Myrtle Beach Bowl. Nice little beach atmosphere here for Georgia Southern and Ohio University. These are December 16th. Got to wake up early for this one. It is 11 a.m. Eastern. Andy, I'll start with you. Who's winning this morning game in the nice sandy beaches of Myrtle Beach here?
You know what? So Ohio is going to be without their starting quarterback, and he's been their starting quarterback for the past few years, Curtis Rourke. He actually just committed to Indiana today as of this recording. So I believe it's Parker Navarro getting the start for the Bobcats. They're 9-3. They're going for the second 10-win season in program history. looking for back-to-back bowl wins as they won the inaugural Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl last year. So give me the Bobcats here. Georgia Southern comes in at 6-6. Not going to pretend to know much about them, but I will take Ohio.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, Georgia Southern with an atrocious finish to the season. They lost 4 straight. They haven't won since October 26th. They're somehow favored by 3.5 as of yesterday. I don't know if that line has changed. But the Bobcats finished second in the MAC. Yes, Rourke might not be playing, but their defense has given up just 30 points once all season long. They have a really good defense. I think they can pressure Davis Brin and force him to go in other areas outside of Caleb Hood and Derwin Burgess Jr. So I like Ohio as well.
Yeah, to jump on that transfer as well. Glad we're all keeping track of the transfer portal this year because, like Tom said, it was wild last year. This is 40 plus games and kids are jumping into the transfer left and right. So forgive us, viewers. Sometimes it gets a little tough to follow all these kids. But yeah, QB Curtis Rourke did enter the transfer portal. Their starter, so that's a big loss here for a game like this. I will say, Mr. Rourke here spells Curtis with a K. If you're spelling your name that way, I don't want you on my team anyways. Even more so because Curtis with a K only threw for 11 touchdowns and 5 interceptions through his 300-plus throws. Just not great production there for him. Davis Brin for the Eagles. Listen, when you dig deep, his stats aren't very great either. He's got 16 interceptions in just 12 games. But it's bowl season. The early games are here for the fun. Georgia State likes, to have a little bit of fun on the field. They just let him throw it left and right, toss that sucker at will. He's got 3,400 yards and 22 touchdowns. So we'll cancel out some of those interceptions. Despite the fact that I'm a ratio guy, don't worry about it. It's bowl season. I'm actually going to go Georgia Southern here. Next up, bowl number 2, we have the Cricket Celebration Bowl. This is the HBCU Bowl here. We have Howard coming in at 6-5, taking on Florida A&M, 11-1. Heck of a season for them. This is a nooner, so if you want to get an extra hour of sleep here, skip the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Come in for the Celebration Bowl. Andy, who do you like in this one?
So I like that we're throwing the HBCU in here. This Celebration Bowl, I believe they call it the HBCU National Championship. Since this game's inception in 2015, teams from the MEAC, the MEAC, are 6-1 over the SWAC. That includes the wins over Deion Sanders' Jackson State teams and Florida A&M. Are they going to be the next powerhouse out of the SWAC to miss out on a bowl game win? I don't think so. They're averaging 30 points per game. They're only giving up 14 points per contest. Quentin Williams will be the quarterback for the Bisons. He's going to have his hands full. Going to need to have a big game, but he's averaging just a shade under 200 pass yards per game, 16 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. How is that for a ratio, Brian? So
Very nice.
They're 2-1 in their last 3 games. The Rattlers are 3-0 in their last 3 games. It's going to be a fun one, I think. One worth tuning in, but I will take Florida A&M.
All right, Tom.
Well, A&M's only loss was to USF back on September 9th. It's been a long time since they've lost. Their defense is very solid as well on top of their offense. The Rattlers will rattle this Bison squad. Give me Florida A&M.
All right. For me, both teams come in as conference champions. You got Howard winning, as Andy said, the MEAC. I've never actually heard that conference name said out loud, so I'm assuming that's how they pronounce it. And then
MEAC, MEAC, I don't know.
Yeah, and then FAMU on the other side winning the SWAC. That one's a little bit easier to say there. They're playing in a big boy stadium, which is kind of what I love about this one. They're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the Atlanta Falcons, of course. I expect it to start a little bit slow, but only because of the crazy atmosphere. If you've watched any big HBCU games, the fans always show out, the families, the bands are always great. The marching bands, of course, I'm talking about. It's going to be a packed house. It'll be super exciting. So the kids might come out, a little bit more skittish. They might try to just run the ball early. Score might be a little low to start the game. But yeah, Florida A&M has been cruising on cruise control all season with that 11-1 record. Howard, they've been fighting for wins, I guess we'll say, at 6-5. But they've got some good players, but not enough to match FAMU all the way across the board. So for me, I also am going with FAMU here. That'll move us into game number 3. We got the New Orleans Bowl. It is Raging Cajuns here taking on the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. The second Gamecocks here, of course, got to give some credit to the South Carolina Gamecocks and our boy Spencer Rattler. But Andy, will start with you on this one again. Who do you like in this one?
Man, I think that Jacksonville State will be out for blood in this one. They originally, since they're just making their transition to the FBS, they're in the CUSA. They're 8-4. They went 6-2 their first, full year. They were trying to make this team, ineligible for the postseason. Lucky for the Gamecocks, the rest of the NCAA sucks and did not have enough 6-6 teams, so they got in, which they should have been in a bowl game regardless of that. They won 8 games. They went 8-4. They had a great year, despite this game being played in New Orleans, and despite UL being the Raging Cajuns and that being the best fucking mascot name in college football, or in college athletics, you could argue. It's incredible. The Raging Cajuns versus the Cox, folks. Cajuns versus the Cox. Give me the Cox in the New Orleans Bowl.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, well, you know what? The Cox have lost 2 out of their last 3. They weren't competitive against South Carolina. They rely a lot on their run game. They average just under 5 yards a carry. The Raging Cajuns, not too hot lately. They've lost 3 out of their last 4, but again, they're another team that runs the ball for a little over 5 yards per carry. Tight end Neil Johnson is a vertical threat over the middle of the field with 5 touchdowns, and they have 3 players on their defense with 6+ sacks. I'm going the other way here with the upset. Give me Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, I don't know much about these 2 teams here, but I am, happy that they did sneak into the bowl game here. Talking about Jacksonville State, they quite literally tried to cock block the Gamecocks here with that bowl ban. It backfired, so suck on that, the rule makers. But yeah, 2.5 point spread here on this one, so Vegas expects a close one, which to me shows that Jacksonville State deserved to have a bowl game in the first place. So I don't know. I think just because of that, I think this is going to be actually an interesting one to watch. If for nothing else, that I don't think we've covered either of these teams this season. Certainly not Jacksonville State. But yeah, I think I'll take Jacksonville State just because of how they snuck into this one. So gotta, rub it in the face of those that try to keep them out. Give them the win here. Next up, we have the Cure Bowl. As the graphic is not centered here, sorry about that one. Is Appalachian State taking on Miami of Ohio. Andy, I'll start with you. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting one. Miami comes into the game. They're the MAC champions, 11-2 on the season. App State, the runners-up in the Sun Belt, 8-5. Going to be a fun one. Miami without a quarterback, really. So Blaine Gabbert's younger brother, Brett Gabbert, he was their number 1 quarterback to start the year, suffered a season-ending injury during the regular season. Then it was Avion Smith led the Redhawks to 5 straight wins and the MAC title. 208 all-purpose yards in the win over Toledo in the MAC championship game. He also averages 5.1 yards per carry, led the Redhawks with 939 yards on the ground, 12 touchdowns. He has entered the transfer portal. He entered the transfer portal after the MAC championship game, so they are now down to their 3rd-string quarterback, sophomore Henry Hesson, I don't know, Hesson. And he's only thrown 5 passes, which that was last year. Has not played at all so far this year. So an 11-win team coming into a bowl game with a guy that has not played at all. Give me the Mountaineers. All
right, Tom.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. The Red Hawks, they're on that 5-game win streak. They did not allow more than 16 points. Defensively, Caden Woolard and Brian Ugwu, Ty Weiss are all still there. With the Mountaineers, they brought UNC to double overtime earlier this year. They handed James Madison their only loss of the season back on November 18th. Joey Aguilar, really impressive passer, over 3,500 yards on the season. They have 2 running backs with over 600 yards. Ty Funderburk in the secondary is really good, pressing opposite receivers. So give me App State as well. I know they're favored by 6.5. I like them to win.
Yeah, obviously the Gabbert injury, big one here. I actually wasn't aware that they were down to their 3rd string, though. On App State side, however, not many transfers at all on the entire team here, but they do lose their top running back, Nate Noel, to the portal. That'll be a big loss here, as they are a team that, is pretty well-rounded with the play selection here, running versus pass. But they should be, more or less fine because Aguilar can sling it. An impressive 3,500 yards this season. Miami's offense kind of sputtered a bit down the stretch. That injury obviously playing a big part here. Yeah, they didn't close out the season well, so I like App State here, but I think it will be a little close despite the 3rd string here for Miami. Next up, the 5th game, we have the New Mexico Bowl. It is New Mexico State taking on Fresno State. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I don't know about you guys. I know I said these are small bowl games, and this is a small one, but I think it's a pretty interesting matchup here. Andy, what do you think about this one?
Give me the Aggies, baby. My boy Diego Pavia is back. He's in his hometown of Albuquerque for the New Mexico Bowl. The kid is back. Also keep this in mind, folks. Fresno State is without head coach Jeff Tedford. He stepped away from the team to deal with some health issues. Wishing you all the best, Coach Tedford. Hoping you feel better. And then also their backup quarterback Fife entered the transfer portal. Will not be in uniform. So if anything were to happen to our boy Mikey Keene, Brian, there could be some problems for Fresno State. But I do think you're right. I think this is going to be a really close one. But give me the Aggies.
Don't put that bad juju on me, Ricky Bobby. I don't know what I would do if another UCF QB went down. Well, ex-UCF QB, but we still love him. Went down with an injury. Tom, what do you think about this one?
Well, New Mexico State, yes, they've had a good season. Let's remember they did lose to UMass in week 0. They also lost to Liberty in the conference title game. I like the play of Diego Pavia and what he's done this season. He has good receivers in Trent Hudson and Jonathan Brady. For Fresno State, they finished 6th in the Mountain West. However, they do have quality wins against Purdue, Arizona State, Utah State, UNLV, and Boise State. So they also deserve to be here in this game. However, they are on a 3-game losing streak. So I'm a little concerned about that. Their defense forced a lot of turnovers. 22 this season in 12 games. So I'm not so sure here. I'm going to go the other way and pick Fresno State. I just think Mikey Keene can get it done. He's been around for a while. I think that defense is really, really strong.
Yeah, like I said, I'm excited to watch this one. I probably will tune in for this one here. I like both teams here. They've been really fun to watch all season. The QBs obviously are the where the target is going to be. QBs Diego Pavia for New Mexico State and Mikey Keene have combined for 47 touchdowns and 5,500 yards this season. So I think we'll probably see quite a bit of offense, I'd say. Pavia, obviously, he's got the wheels as well. He's taken off for an additional 6 touchdowns on the ground. It's a bowl game. I think it's going to be obviously a little even more loosey-goosey than usual on defense. So I think we see big points here. But yeah, Fresno State has struggled late in the season. Those last 3 wins to close out their regular season, not looking great. So even though I think they're the better team here, I think New Mexico State is on a little bit of a better roll here. So I'm rolling with the Aggies here to keep on rolling. Next up, we have the LA Bowl, which I did not show you guys the graphics beforehand, but every single graphic for this bowl game, I promise you this, the picture of Rob Gronkowski, who is hosting the game, is bigger than the logos for the teams and the bowl logo in every single graphic that they put out. So right now, there's just a big old picture of Gronk holding his WWE belt next to the teams. Does it make sense? I don't know. 2 decent teams, though, Andy. So makes sense of this game for me. And who do you think is going to win?
Yeah, so UCLA is going to be missing a lot. Also, I want to point out, fun fact, they will actually be closer to campus in this game, in their bowl game, than they are when they play their home games. SoFi Stadium is closer to the UCLA campus than the Rose Bowl. But anyway, UCLA was without their defensive coordinator, their quarterback's coach. Dante Moore is gone. The Latu, their best defensive lineman, is gone. He's going to the draft. Tight end Carson Ryan, wide receiver Cam Brown, Keegan Jones, Carson Steele, all of these guys are not playing. Not going to be great. Give me Boise State. I believe Taylor Green, he hit the portal, so he will not be playing. So the Broncos will be starting 3rd-string quarterback, true freshman CJ Tiller. Got a hell of a job on his hands, but I still think they get it done. I am going to take the Broncos, who are still riding the high of their interim head coach. They fired Andy Avalos after starting 5-5. And then they hired, what's his name? I'm so sorry. I had it right here. Spencer Danielson. I'm so sorry. He's 3-0 as the interim head coach. I think he finishes the season 4-0, and they take down Chip Kelly and UCLA. Also, Boise State, 26 straight years making a bowl game. That's impressive.
Gotta love it. They are one of the G5 darlings because they're so good. Tom, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, look, it's a shame that Dante Moore's transferring. I think he should have been a little more patient. Good job by Notre Dame not recruiting him. Bruins lost 3 of their last 4 games. Chip Kelly's job is safe for 2024, 7th in the last year of the Pac-12. Ethan Garbers may start this game. Again, he started the year as a starter before being benched for Moore, eventually regained the spot, helped them to win over USC. Andy mentioned no Carson Steele, no Latu. Taylor Green actually went to Arkansas to play for Bobby Petrino. Little fun fact there, a little more juice to Taylor Green's adventure in his collegiate journey. Ashton Jeanty, though, is still there, and Ahmed Hassanin is still there on defense. I still think UCLA pulls it out, actually. I think, Garbers is proven he's serviceable. They're favored by 4 as of when I put these notes down on the script. So I think that home field advantage will do a little bit for them, and I like the Bruins.
Yeah, this is a tough one because of all the players lost. I do have a few more. This might be the one with the most, at least in this part 1 segment here for these smaller games. They also lost, this is UCLA I'm speaking about, 3 other 4-star players. They got cornerback John Humphrey, hit the portal. Kamari Ramsey, safety, hit the portal. And safety Marcus Ratcliffe, 4 stars as well. They all hit the portal. Dante Moore obviously being the big one here. I still think UCLA has a little bit of an edge here. They're the all-around better team this season. I think Boise State has looked more reliable, especially down the stretch. But I think this is almost a scenario at UCLA where so many players have transferred out that the next man up in every one of those positions is now fighting in this game to show that they deserve the starting position next year. So I think UCLA will actually put a little bit more effort into this game without those starting players. So I'm going to ride with the Bruins, but this one's a toss-up for me. Moving into the next one here, we have Cal taking on Texas Tech in the Independence Bowl. Andy, who do you like in this one?
It's going to be tough for the Red Raiders offense. They are without 2 of their top receivers, Miles Price and Jerran Bradley. Both will not be playing in this game. They have entered the transfer portal. Texas Tech has 14 touchdown passes to receivers this season. Those 2 are responsible for 9 of the 14. That's a big loss for this offense. 2 defenses actually will be the best 2 units on the field here. Give me Cal. Fuck it. Give me Cal.
All right, Tom.
Well, it's going to be interesting for Cal. They've won their last 3 games against Wazoo, Stanford, and UCLA, who we just discussed. Fernando Mendoza began the year as a third-string quarterback. He is now the starter. Jaden Ott, really good runner of the football. Texas Tech has not played since November 24th. However, they were battle-tested this year. They beat TCU, Kansas, and Bryans UCF in a 3-game span. We know Tyler Show transferred to Louisville. Baron Morton, serviceable job. Taj Brooks is still there. The only other time these teams have played was 2004, and Texas Tech won the game. I keep picking opposite of Andy, and unfortunately, I'm going to do it again. I like Texas Tech in this one.
All right. Yeah, obviously the big name here. Another guy, we've been talking on the side, everyone, about players that just seem to not go away. Seems like Tyler Shuck has been all over the country with his transferring, and he's just been there pulling a Van Wilder. This, I think, going into year 5, maybe even 6 at this point. But yeah, he's
I think it's going to be his 7th year.
7? Well, there you go.
I think it's going to be his 7th year at Louisville.
That he's been in college football so long that I now have dementia and cannot remember how long he's even been there. But yeah, so he goes, and then from there, I think he left in November still. It hadn't even hit December. He hit the portal, and the dominoes just started to fall. Texas Tech has lost 13 more players to the portal since then. And my biggest issue here is that a lot of them are O-line. So we're going to see a lot of fresh O-line here protecting a fresh QB. I don't think that's going to be very pretty because Cal actually has a pretty decent defense here. They do lose a pretty big player in linebacker Caleb Elarms-Orr. However, he was the leading tackler for the Golden Bears. But the core of the defense still looks strong enough to me. They didn't lose much else. And they're particularly strong at the linebacker position to fill that hole from Elarms-Orr, led by David Reese now, who has 6.5 sacks, Xavier Carlton 4.5, and Cade Uluave at 2.5. So they get to the ball quick. They also force a lot of fumbles. They've racked up 16 strips this season and recovered 14 of them. So yeah, I like this Cal offense here, and I think the young bucks on Texas Tech and that O-line aren't going to be able to hold that Cal defense very well here. So I'm taking the Cal Golden Bears here. Next up, we have Western Kentucky taking on Old Dominion here in the famous Toastery Bowl. Andy, I'll start with you. Who do you like in the famous Toastery Bowl?
I think this is the first year of the famous Toastery Bowl.
It is.
So welcome to the party. Will Western Kentucky be wearing the helmets with Big Red on them? Because that really has an effect on my decision. So, I mean, it's 2 teams. Western Kentucky comes in at 7-5. The Monarchs of ODU are 6-6. ODU is a 2.5-point favorite. Over-unders at 55.5. Give me Western Kentucky simply because the Hilltoppers is a great matchup, and Big Red, their mascot, is one of the best, if not the best in the country. They need to make their all-time helmets with him on there. Those are incredibly fire.
Yeah, I feel like a bowl game is a perfect place to do it too for an inaugural bowl. Tom, who do you like in this one?
We just can't seem to agree here. The Hilltoppers finished 4th in Conference USA. Austin Reed had a phenomenal season. I know Malachi Corley accepted an invite to the Senior Bowl. Great for him. 11 touchdowns on the season. ODU took James Madison to the wire. They only lost by 3 points. Grant Wilson, not much of a runner at quarterback. I like how he protects the football for the most part. Jason Henderson had 167 tackles this season. He might be the leading tackler in FBS. He's definitely up there if he's not number 1. Speaking of which, he's one of 3 Monarchs in that front 7 with over 100 tackles. That is not common. So I'm going Old Dominion here. They are favored by 2.5, 6-6 on the season. I think they hold on.
Yeah, so I guess I'll be the one to say it because I know everyone's thinking it. But what the heck is famous Toastery? I'll answer that question. It is apparently a brunch restaurant in Charlotte, who apparently has enough money to buy the rights to a bowl game in the year 2023. So they must be raking it in with those brunch menus that they're serving up there in North Carolina. But yeah, for anyone wondering, Andy's right. This is the inaugural Toastery Bowl here because it is taking over for the Bahamas Bowl for 1 year as they renovate the stadium. Next year, don't worry, we'll be right back into the Bahamas, where that bowl does have the wildest stuff happen. If you've ever watched a Bahamas Bowl, they'll just let people, walk down the stadium stairs onto the field with a beer. It's an incredible watch every season. But yeah, as far as the game itself here, the player to watch, obviously Austin Reed. We talked about him a lot last year. A lot of impressive performances, so it was well warranted. Western Kentucky as a team has regressed a little bit this season. It wasn't really enough to ride on the back of Reed to get them a better bowl game. They just snuck in there to get a Toastery Bowl game. Yeah, he still himself has looked good enough. Finished the season with 3,300 plus yards, 31 touchdowns. His top target, obviously Malachi Corley, had 11 of those to go with it. On Old Dominion side, they barely snuck into this bowl game, barely snuck into bowl contention at all. To be honest, they got that 6th win in the final game of the season with a 1-point win over Georgia State. So they were hanging on, grasping at straws to get into this game. I think Western Kentucky is just too good for them here. Although I'm now realizing, no, I'm sticking with Western Kentucky. I don't want to second guess myself here. Next up, we have UTSA taking on Marshall. It is the Frisco Bowl. This is on the 19th, a night game here. Andy, who do you like in this one?
So UTSA, Frank Harris, he will be starting at quarterback. And yes, folks, he's coming back next year for his 8th year of college football. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm a little worried about Marshall in this game, guys. They're going to be without their starting quarterback, Cam Fancher, who's in the transfer portal. He is one of 18 members of this Marshall Thundering Herd squad that is in the transfer portal and will not play in this game. UTSA heavy favorites, and I think they take the win. They will be without Trey Moore, their stud edge rusher, who's entered the portal for his last year of college football, I believe, which you can't blame him after putting up numbers like he has this season. You go take a shot, see what you can get at a bigger program.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, it's wild that Frank Harris is coming back for, what is it, Andy, an 8th or a 9th season now?
8th season, yeah.
Ridiculous. He's day-to-day with an injury, but expected to play. Man, give me UTSA. Marshall has lost 6 of their last 8 games. They're not good. They're just not good. So that's all I have to say on that one.
Well, you know what? When you put it that way, Tom, I guess I'm taking UTSA. No, I was gonna go with them anyways, but I think that locks it in. I didn't track back their schedule that far, but yeah, I had done that they've lost 3 of their last 5 in horrible fashion, and the only 2 wins are against Arkansas State and Georgia Southern, who are not all that great. But they lost the other 3 games by a combined like 94 points and only scored 15 in those, so they are slumping right now. And Andy, you confirmed. I was gonna ask one of you guys if anyone knew if our boy Frankie was playing, Frankie Harris. If he's locked in, I'm locked in for UTSA here. Next up, we have Syracuse taking on the University of South Florida. Thumbs down on that one, but it is the Boca Raton Bowl. Hopefully they get some nice weather there, especially for Syracuse, coming up from the old north there. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Give me USF. My guy Alex Galesh, former Illini assistant, also lived in my neighborhood growing up. I want to say neighbor, but it was kind of, it was around the corner down the street. It wasn't that close enough to be a neighbor. My sister watches kids, still has a relationship with them. And they have been close in a lot of their games this year. They're 6-6. Obviously, we know that game they had with Alabama. They hung with Memphis, very tough. Syracuse, obviously, without Dino Babers, kind of limped through the end of the season there. Not sure if Schrader is playing or not for them, but give me the Bulls.
All right, Tom.
So Schrader is playing, but he is on his way out. This will be his last game. Very mobile quarterback he is. The Orange love to run the football. Their interim head coach, Nunzio Campanile, will coach the bowl game and remain on the staff under Fran Brown in 2024. So it's great to see an interim remain on the coaching staff, even if it's not in the same capacity. But Syracuse has lost 6 of their last 8 games. Dino Babers getting fired was my prediction at our very first show at the start of the season. I like South Florida a lot, but for some reason, the New York in me, the Tommy DeVito in me, is saying to go with the Orange here. So I'm sorry, Andy. I do think South Florida is tremendously improved as a football program, but I guess give me Syracuse in this one. I'm not saying that too confidently.
I guess.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced Tom's going off his notes anymore. I think he's just trying to pick every single game against Andy here.
I love it.
But no,
The
yeah,
past like 6 weeks of the show, we basically picked all the same shit anyways.
that is true. But yeah, for me, I mean, I think Syracuse is the better team here. I don't really want to root for USF, but this is a Florida team playing in Florida. Sun's going to be shining. It is not. I didn't ask you guys what the weather is up there, but it is a brisk 60 degrees here right now.
I'll tell you what, you can go fuck yourself. It's been 30 for the past like this entire month.
I would share some of the weather if I could, but I don't think Mother Nature works that way. But yeah, I'm gonna be the Florida boy and root for the Florida team here. I like Byron Brown at QB for USF. They've been really fun to watch. Obviously, taking Bama to the brink was also very funny to watch. And I still think, despite the fact that everyone kind of memed on Alabama, they did look impressive in that game. So we've seen how good this team can be. I'm gonna pull for USF here, and I think that would be an upset. Maybe not. I think the spread is close. I'm not sure where it is right now, but I'm going to ride with the Bulls here. Next up, we have Georgia Tech taking on another Florida team, my UCF Knights here. Andy, who do you like in this one?
I think this is going to be a really fun football game, Brian. I kind of want to wait to make my pick to see if you bet against UCF or not, because that will definitely affect my decision, because every time you doubt your team, they win in just embarrassing fashion. They just absolutely destroy whoever it is you pick. So, if you pick Georgia Tech, then I pick UCF. If you pick UCF, then I don't know. I got to think about it more. But the Gasparilla Bowl, it's in Tampa. Are you going?
I might try to get a media pass for this one, honestly.
You should.
Might be. Georgia Tech looked pretty good this season, so I think if I can swing this one, I will try to go in some capacity.
So UCF currently favored by 4.5. The total's up to like 64. So expect points. Your boy Plumlee is playing in this game. This has got to be his last game for UCF, I would guess. Or does he have more eligibility?
Like we just said with Tyler Shuck, who knows at this point? He might be here for another 5 years.
They'll pull another year out of his ass out of thin air. Give me the Knights though. I'll root for UCF with my boy Brian.
All right, Tom.
Red alert. I'm going with Andy here on this one.
Oh.
Georgia Tech, they have been impressive at times this year, specifically against Georgia. They have wins over Miami, Florida, UNC, and Syracuse. John Rice Plumlee is still there. He's mobile. He's a dual threat. RJ Harvey with 16 touchdowns on the season. Javon Baker is a touchdown maker with 6 touchdowns on the season, just 4 yards shy of 1,000. And let's not forget about their defense, too. Malachi Lawrence and Trayvon Morris-Brash coming off the edge with a bunch of sacks on the year. Can the Yellow Jackets offensive tackles keep up with them? No. UCF wins.
All right, I like it. Obviously, I am locked in to picking UCF here, despite the fact that basically dooms them to lose based on my picks. This exactly. One question I will ask, because I haven't seen anything about it. Does anyone know, is Georgia Tech's starting QB locked in here? Or is he possibly looking for another transfer?
There's no rumors of him transferring. I think he's staying, and it looks like he's going to play. All
right. Well, if Haynes King is in the game, it'll make this one pretty interesting, I think. Our defense isn't great, and 2 of our best defensive players have entered the portal in Hill Green and Fred Davis, both four stars. Those are rare for us to pick up. We do lose them. So there might be a few holes in our defense. But Georgia Tech also suffers that same fate usually. So I think we see a high-scoring one, a really fun one here, again, in Study, Florida. So enjoy that one on December 22nd as you watch UCF lose now that we've all picked them. Next up, we have the Birmingham Bowl. It is Troy versus a very depleted Duke team. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, so Duke is missing 7 starters, including former starting quarterback Riley Leonard, who is now committed to Tom's Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Also missing their head coach, Mike Elko, taking the Texas A&M job. Troy's head coach, Sumrall, is going to be took a job with Tulane. So he will be going over there. So they're both missing their head coaches. Troy is opened as a slight favorite. They're 11-2 on the year. They've been really fun in the Fun Belt. And they currently own the second longest winning streak with 5 consecutive victories in bowl games. Look for them to get their 6th here. I just don't think Duke is going to have enough. I think they're, obviously Duke's defense has been really good all year. But give me Troy.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I think Troy should thank Notre Dame for the assist here. Not just taking Duke quarterback Riley Leonard, but also Duke starting defensive end RJ Oben has committed to Notre Dame. He had 5 sacks for Duke on the season. So we took 2 Dukies on our team. Troy's 11-2. We know Duke hired Manny Diaz as their next head coach. Trooper Taylor is the interim.
Great name.
And you know what? Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what about this Troy team? They started the year 1-2, and look at them now. They ripped through 10 straight victories behind the arm of Gunnar Watson and the feet of Kamani Vidal. Vidal had 14 touchdowns on the year and over 1,500 yards, and Gunnar Watson is a gunslinger, no pun intended on that one. And they have 3 receivers over 550 yards. Javon Solomon with 16 sacks. Give me Troy.
I was gonna go Troy anyways because Duke is so depleted, but all the names we were just listing off, this team is locked in for best names, I think, with some of the guys they've got here. But yeah, as a team, they've looked really good. I know they lose their head coach, who did a heck of a job here getting Troy to 11-2. They rattled off a ton of wins against some good teams down the stretch. They crushed App State, who is another one of the G5 teams that everyone kind of aspires to be at that G5 level. They're always very good. They beat Louisiana, another bowl team that we just talked about. Southern Alabama, another bowl team, bowl eligible team. So this is a good team, and I think losing Leonard and Elko is just too much for Duke. I know, like I said, with UCLA, the next man up, those new kids, those young kids are going to step up and try to lock in those starting roles and play a little bit harder than most people do in a bowl game. But I mean, Elko was a hell of a coach for this Duke team, and Riley Leonard was a heck of a QB here for the Blue Devils. So I think those are just two crucial pieces to pull off a win here against Troy. So I'm going Troy here as well. Next up, we have the Camellia Bowl. It is Arkansas State taking on Northern Illinois. This one's on the 23rd. Morning game here at 11 a.m. Andy, who do you like?
Yeah, both these teams really started the season on not such a high note. Arkansas State was outscored 110-3 in their first 2 games of the season. The Huskies up in DeKalb started the year 1-5, then won 5 of their last 7 to make it to a bowl game. I'm going to be a homer here. My girlfriend Kaylin went to Northern Illinois, so I will take the Huskies in the Camellia Bowl. Folks, get up, get excited for this one.
All right, Tom.
Make this 3 in a row. I'm siding with Andy here. Northern Illinois, 1-point dogs according to the spread. Rocky Lombardi might not throw the ball a whole lot, but they rely on their running game. Ontario Brown has had a phenomenal season for them. And Jalen Raynor just doesn't impress me that much for Arkansas State. We mentioned they got off to a slow start. They're here at 6-6. I like Northern Illinois a little more.
Yeah, nothing really super impressive about the players on either team here. That could make this one interesting, I guess, because they're evenly matched in a not so great way. But no one's got like that star player, that superstar piece that's gonna turn the light switch on and turn this into a blowout. Yeah, I guess I gotta rep NIU for Andy's girlfriend here. Rolling packs, support your boys and your boys' girls. So I'll go with NIU here. Next up, game number 14 on the slate, we have the Armed Forces Bowl. It is James Madison taking on Air Force. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Give me the Dukes, another team like we talked about with Jacksonville State earlier, making the transition from the FCS to the FBS. They finished 11-1, like Tom mentioned earlier. Their only loss to Old Dominion at home, and they weren't allowed to play in the Sun Belt championship game, which is fucking bullshit. They went 11-1. That's absolutely ridiculous. Glad they get to play in a bowl game here. They're favored over the Air Force Academy. Give me the Dukes. I know they did lose their coach, Kurt Signetti. He is now at Indiana in the Big Ten with your boy. But I believe Jordan McLeod, who is in the transfer portal, but he will play in this game for James Madison, to my knowledge.
All right, Tom.
McLeod has entered the portal, but I'm hearing he will play in the bowl game. That's what I'm hearing. Phenomenal season for him, 32 touchdowns, 8 rushing on the year. The Dukes, their only loss, it was an OT to App State. Again, Andy calls it the Fun Belt. I do agree. They have 2,000-yard receivers in Elijah Surratt and Reggie Brown, Mikhail Kamara, and Jalen Green. Jalen Green with 15.5 sacks. Francis Meehan on that back line with 3 picks. Air Force, they lost 4 straight after starting 8-0, so they haven't done much for me lately to convince me to pick them here in this one, so I like James Madison too.
Yeah, I think McLeod playing makes all the difference here for this one. Obviously, you want to support the troops here. Air Force is a pretty good team. But yeah, Jordan McLeod, 3,400 yards. And like you guys said, he's got the legs to eat up yards on the ground as well, making that dual threat. Yeah, Air Force, I loved him early in the season. They started at 8-0. I was really pulling for him, but they lose 4 straight and not against great teams. Boise State and UNLV, I'll give them some credit. And those games are a little bit close, but you lose to Hawaii and Army as well. It's not a great look. I don't know if they just gave up, but they're playing. Anyone who watched the Army game, you could see it was like that. What is it? Immovable object meets unstoppable force type thing, where both teams love to run the ball and drain the clock, and it just did not work for Air Force at all that game. They only scored 3 points, and they just have not recovered. So I don't think they recovered here. James Madison looking really good, so I'm going with the Dukes as well. Next up, game number 15, we have Utah State taking on Georgia State on Saturday, December 23rd. Andy, who's winning this one?
So, these are two teams that, finished their seasons very differently. Georgia State, they started 6-1, dropped to 6-6 after losing their last 5 games. Not the way you want to end a season. The Aggies won 3 out of their last 4, including a 44-41 double OT game over New Mexico to get to 6-6 and get to a bowl game. You got to love that, fellas. Got to love it. And they're in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. How could you want anything more than these? I mean, throw the records out when these guys get together, folks. It just means more G5 teams. I will take Utah State. They've got more momentum right now.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, we were disagreeing. Now I feel like we're agreeing on everything, Andy. Yeah, what have you done for me lately? Look, there's no hiding this. Utah State could have easily ended the season 4-8. They really could have, but they got to 6-6. They had the 2 double overtime wins. Cooper Legis, the quarterback, has announced his return for 2024, which is great for Utah State. They have 2 receivers with 10-plus touchdowns as well. They love to throw the rock around. Jalen Royals, Terrell Vaughn. Darren Granger is a threat for Georgia State. I think he's a solid quarterback at this level. But I think Utah State has a little more here, and they're on the uptrend. Georgia State cannot say the same.
Yeah, I think this is the matchup that's pretty great because I think if you looked at this at the halfway point of the season and asked everyone who would win in this hypothetical matchup, everyone would have picked Georgia State. And now, if you ask the same question, everyone would pick Utah State. Georgia State isn't just losing; they're getting the doors blown off. These games are not close. You can give them a pass for the LSU game. No one would expect them to keep it close there, but they're just losing big to everyone that they played down the stretch. So. We didn't cover either of these teams much. I didn't want to bring this up because it's not even really a football fact, but I was obsessed with the Twitter account of the Idaho Potato Bowl here. Whoever's running that account, instead of badgering fans, buy the tickets, here's where you buy the tickets, come buy your bowl tickets, they've just been posting potato-based polls for people to answer. Just 2 days after the game was announced and tickets were dropped, didn't even bring up the tickets. They just asked, what type of French fry is best? I love that. And in case anyone is wondering, curly fry won with 32.5% of the vote. Close second was waffle fry, 31.1%. And then the absolute scrubs of the fry world are crinkle cut and steak fries, both under 20%. So there you have it. There's your fry stats. You didn't know you were going to get those today in the Potato Bowl. But yeah, Utah State just looking really good down the stretch here. So I'm riding with them as well. Next up, we have South Alabama. Sorry, almost said Southern. South Alabama taking on Eastern Michigan here in the 68 Ventures Bowl. A little bit like the Toastery Bowl. Not sure what company this is. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with South Alabama. They're heavy favorites in this game. They're 16-point favorites, but on the Sagarin college football rankings, the Eagles of Eastern Michigan come in at 130. They may very well be the worst team that actually made a bowl game. So give me South Alabama. I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about either of these teams. But, anytime you see a spread like this, I mean, it's hard not to pick them to win. I know I'm doing the easy thing here, folks, but this game shouldn't be anything more than easy for South Alabama.
All right, Tom.
Well, they finished second in the Fun Belt West. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Fun Belt folks, if you're just tuning in now. Carter Bradley and LaDamian Webb have been really good this year for South Alabama. I like them a lot. Colin Lacey. The defense has been up and down, but I like them a little more than Eastern Michigan here. So South Alabama to win.
Yeah, this is another one, Andy, I'm with you as well. I don't think we covered either of these teams. We covered South Alabama a few times, I think either last year or 2 years ago. Eastern Michigan we haven't talked about at all, probably because they're the 130th ranked team in the Sagarin rankings. The biggest concern for me is at quarterback Austin Smith, who they just have still played all season. Awful completion percentage, awful touchdown interception ratio, and he just isn't producing at all through the air. So maybe it's the play calling that's just not good, but 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They do get a little bit of reprieve on the ground with the ground game. Samson Evans, pretty good name there. has carried it 142 times for 12 touchdowns. So 12 touchdowns, it's about 1 every 10 or 11 carries. It's not a bad turnover rate for them. But yeah, South Alabama is, you see a 16-point spread and you ride with it, even in a bowl game where teams don't really care as much. So I'm taking South Alabama here as well. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Bowl. Probably the two best teams, I think, in these 18 games, at least, talent-wise. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I believe Bryce Barnes has entered the transfer portal, but again, he will be playing in this game. So another guy, it's kind of nice to see, enters the portal, but still wants to go out with his team and still end on a high note. I know a little weird, but, you take what you can get. I will shout out the Wildcats head coach, David Braun, who got that interim tag removed and is the permanent head coach, permanent, obviously. But hats off to them. They had a great year, most improved team in college football. So that's nothing to scoff at. Utah, what are they going to do? They're going to try to run the ball. They love to run the ball down your throat. They run it 43 times per game. That's 10th in the nation, guys. Give me the Utes. I'm going against Northwestern because I hate them. They're nerds and they're losers. But, I will tip my cap to them. They had a great year.
All right, Tom, who do you like here, the Utes or the Nerds?
Well, Andy predicted the Nerds would finish 1-11 this year, and
Yep,
unfortunately,
I did.
the Nerds.
I was very wrong.
The Nerds are the reason why Illinois is not in the bowl game right now,
among other things. Yes.
Yes. Love you, Andy. Anyway, Utah. All 4 losses were to top 20 teams in the nation. Bryson Barnes, Andy mentioned, will play. Nate Johnson also leaving for the transfer portal. So Cam Rising coming back as a 7th-year quarterback next year. You gotta love it. The oldest starting quarterback in college football, at least as Power 5 is concerned. But Jonah Elis, I have heard nothing about him opting out of this game. I don't know if you mentioned it, Andy, but I know Cole Bishop will not play. He has officially declared for the NFL draft, their star safety. So they have 4 players who've declared for the draft. 14 have entered the transfer portal. To be exact, I don't think Jonah Elis is one of them. Northwestern ended the season ripping off 3 straight wins. They also beat Wisconsin and Purdue. Defensively, they can get to the quarterback. I like Xander Muller a lot, but Utah's favored by 7. I trust that line. Give me the Mormons.
There we go. The Mormons versus the Nerds. This is just an absolute classic matchup. Yeah, for me, the losses aren't that bad for me, considering the circumstances here that Utah had. You lose your top quarterback, one of the best in the nation, a dual threat. And you put in a guy who's a fighter, but he's nowhere near as good as Cam Rising was. Yeah, they did really poorly against Oregon, but I liked the fight they gave against Washington, which was one of the last games of the season. So I think it's still a really good team. The one thing I was just trying to pull up before it got to me here, because I hadn't seen yet, is if Siani Vaki was going to be playing in this game. I am going to stall for 2 seconds, and it doesn't look like he's in the portal. So yeah, he pulls double duty on both sides of the ball. He's a top player on both sides of the ball for them. Not going to root for the Nerds here. Riding with Andy here. Got to give a little respect to the better Big Ten team, the Illini. But yeah, I'm going Utes here as well. Then moving into our last game here on this card for part 1, we have the Hawaii Bowl. Coastal Carolina taking on San Jose State. We've run through a lot of games here, Andy. Lead us off with the final one here. Who do you like?
The final game. All right, so the Chanticleers, they are without Grayson McCall. He's actually not in the portal anymore. He's committed to NC State.
Oh.
So staying in the Carolinas, he will play his final season of college football at NC State, which I think might be his 6th year. I'm not 100% sure. 5th or 6th for sure. But the storyline for me to watch here, fellas, or my storyline, San Jose State quarterback Chevin Cordero. This is his 6th and final year of college football. He started his career at Hawaii. He's a Hawaii native. He's playing in his hometown. He was the backup to Tua Tagovailoa at St. Louis High School in Honolulu. Played for the Rainbow Warriors from 2018 to 2021 before transferring to San Jose. He's first-team All-Mountain West quarterback. 22 total touchdowns on the year. San Jose State's favored by 7.5. I like them to win the game.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, Grayson McCall to the Wolfpack. That's the 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year gone. I imagine Jarrett Guest will be the guest at quarterback this week. Sam Pinckney with 7 touchdowns on the year. Jared Brown solid for them as well. And the Spartans, there was an uphill battle for them, guys. They started the season just 1-5. They ripped 6 straight wins. They finished in a 3-way tie for first in the Mountain West. They didn't make the conference title game due to some mathematicals.
Holy shit.
Siobhan Cordero, yeah, I believe a defensive lineman just scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's back-to-back defensive touchdowns. They had a defensive lineman score a fat man touchdown for the
There you
Raiders.
go.
Then he just threw a pick six on a screen pass. It is 62-7, pending the extra point, ladies and gentlemen. 14:31 to go in the fourth quarter on Thursday Night Football on Prime.
And speaking of college football, Easton Stick, FCS juggernaut.
Sucks.
Well, in FCS, he didn't
Yeah.
suck. But Javon Cordero, as Andy mentioned, this is a full circle moment for him being back in Honolulu, as he mentioned. He has a great running back to rely on as well with Kyrie Robinson, 18 touchdowns on the year. Nick Nash is a solid receiver on the boundary for them. I don't know how Coastal Carolina can keep up. I'll be rooting for Coastal Carolina because I got a sweater of theirs a couple summers ago, but I'm going to pick San Jose State here. I think the question more is if they cover that 10-point spread. I think that's more what's in question here.
Yeah, the spread. I mean, San Jose State was still ahead in the spread. I think it opened at 7.5. Obviously, the McCall thing moved it quite a bit. An extra 2.5 points. It is now at -10 in San Jose State's favor.
Wow.
But yeah, Siobhan Cordero, just heck of a player. 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions this year. Will be going back to his native land. They love to support their guys out there. It's the same. I think it's part of the reason you get a lot of the Islanders, the Samoans that come over that stay on the West Coast because it's more of a family thing. They're all going to show up to bring their boy back home in possibly his last game, probably that he'll ever play in Hawaii at least. And then, yeah, at wide receiver, one of the most impressive wide receivers in the country this season, at least, Kyrie Robinson, 158 receptions, 1,127 yards, and 18 touchdowns. I didn't have time to see if that leads the nation, but that seems like a heck of a lot of receptions for a single human being. Yeah, so I'm going to go San Jose State as well. And I will pause for 1 second here. This is a little bit odd. I wanted to see if he was leading the nation in receptions, but this says the leader in receptions only has 110. So I'm not sure where ESPN got that stat from. Or maybe I misread it. I'm not really sure. Who knows these days? But that will wrap up the coverage of the games. And real quickly, we're going to jump into, of course, our weekly Parlay Party, where we bet big and lose big also, unless you're Tom, who has hit this season with a pretty big one. Andy, run us through your parlay.
So mine is going to span a couple days here, so it's not an instant gratification, instant payout. I know that is not always everyone's favorite, but we're going to start Saturday, 4:45. I'm taking New Mexico State -2.5 against Fresno State. I adjusted it. I bought 1 point. It was at 3.5 as of this recording. The next game, if we're going chronologically, would be Tuesday, 8 p.m. UTSA at Marshall. I'm going to take the over 52.5 points. Hand up. I took that before I knew Marshall had 18 players out. Next will be Saturday. December 23rd, 11 a.m. Duke and Troy. I'm going to take under 44.5. I do not anticipate very many points from Duke, and I still think their defense can do an okay enough job to hold Troy under that number. And finally, December 23rd at 2:30, I'm going to take James Madison -2.5 against Air Force. 4 picks, plus 1,004, $10 to win $100.49.
Love it. Coming out strong. We need some winners here. We only got two shows of parlays left. Tom, run us through your parlays.
All right, so first up, I'll follow the chronological order like Andy here. All of my bets will be for this Saturday, December 16th. I may place some on future dates, but I'm worried about that day right now. Plus, it'd be nice to get a little payout on Saturday. Have yourself a good weekend. Georgia Southern and Ohio, I like that to go over 45.5. I sold a couple points there. That clocks in at -165. Next up, I have Miami, Ohio, and Appalachian State going over 41.5 points. Sold a couple there in at -133. All right, next up, I have New Mexico State and Fresno State. This is the third and final over here I'm taking. This one, though, is 47.5. That comes in at -183. All right, 2 more. I have UCLA -2 against Boise State. I took that even though I'm aware of Dante Moore, Carson Steele, Laitu Latu, etc. And finally, and that clocks in at -176. And finally, fifth and final, Texas Tech money line against Cal. Cal's defense, I remember last year was atrocious. I don't know if it's much better now, but -155, $10 for 112.25.
All right. Well, Tom, I have to go a little bit against you with mine, but it will be last in the order. First up, I have App State -3 versus Miami of Ohio. I mean, we talked about this game earlier. I think The big theme here on mine is the transfer imbalances. So App State here just winning that battle. They've got too many pieces, like starter pieces here that are too good, and the production is just too good for a Miami team that's going to be on their third stringer here. I like them to win by 3. Second, the game that I think was maybe my favorite on our card today, New Mexico State taking on Fresno State over 48.5. You got both starting QBs. They're really fun to watch and really good players that produce a lot of offense. I think they can get over 48.5 points. Like I said, bowl season, loosey-goosey with the defense. Just under 7 touchdowns. I think they can do it combined. Cal money line, there's the one against you, Tom. I'm going the other way here. I think the transfer imbalance leads heavily in Cal's favor. You talked about their defense not being too great, but I think they are much improved. They did lose, obviously, one of their best linebackers, but that core that I brought up earlier is, the sacks and forced fumbles, they're all over the field with that defense. So I trust them to get a nice little bump here, because I think they are the underdog at plus 130-ish. At time of filming, of course. And then last up, to round it out, Utah -7 versus Northwestern. We already talked about it. Bunch of nerds on the other side of the ball. Utah is still a very good team. They got really good pieces. They competed in some of the games against the top Pac-12 teams, which is surprisingly one of the best conferences of the year this year. So I think they've kept enough that their guys are still going to want to get up at least enough to beat Northwestern, because it'd be a little embarrassing if a Utah team lost to this Northwestern team of big nerds here. That is plus 1,001. There were no rules this year, but it did just slide in over our regular season plus 1,000. That is $10 to win. 110. Wraps up the parlays. Wraps up the shows. I hope that wasn't too long for everyone. That is 18 games. We got 22 for you next week, and 2 playoff games following that. Bowl season, ton of games, ton of fun, ton of good times here on the show. Thank you to my boys Andy Hopper and Tom Scavetta, of course, again, for joining me. Enjoy all the games. Again, timestamps for each game will be down in the description. You can catch what you like. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to this guy as well. His link's in the description. Like and subscribe to that guy over there as well. His link's in the description. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Bowl Season Part 1. Join us next week for Bowl Season Part 2.